I guess the reports last year were true after all at the NFL trade deadline, right, guys? Derrick Henry, the rumor was there was a deal done that he was coming to Baltimore at the deadline. And then it seemed that someone up top really said, nope, he's not coming to Baltimore. So, Zach, if you could elaborate a little bit more specifically, or it's right there. Okay. And this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is from Kevin, the source for this from The Athletic.
Oh, Dan Pompey of The Athletic. Yep.
Okay. So Dan writes here, for those that are listening, because we have it on Spotify and Apple here, for those that are listening, DaCosta agreed to the framework of a trade with Tennessee general manager Ron Carthon, a 4th-round pick that could have become a 3rd had Henry reached certain production levels. However, others in the Titans hierarchy apparently were not on board with the deal, so Derrick Henry played out the season in Nashville. So there was truth to it, guys. There was a lot of truth to it. But I guess is now have the question, and now he's in Baltimore, but what could have been if Derrick Henry was a Baltimore Raven for the final games or the final half of the season going into the postseason? Are we, I don't like playing the what if game, but would that have made a difference?
I feel like we know one thing for certain. Derrick Henry would not have gotten 6 carries in the AFC Championship. At least I like to think that. You know, obviously we've seen all the comments from all the coaches, players talking about game plan, how just kind of got away from them. I just still find it hard to believe the Ravens don't run the ball more if you have Derrick Henry in the backfield in that AFC Championship. So I'm going to say it changes a lot. Does that mean the Ravens go out and win the Super Bowl? Who knows?
Yes.
But I will say, I think the game would have looked a lot different. I'm not sure if they win it still. I'm not sure what happens, but I think it would have been a lot different game and a lot different end of the season if Derrick Henry had been in Baltimore, November, December?
Yeah. And the reason why we're bringing this up, because it's trade deadline time, right? So this was the NFL trade deadline. We have MLB approaching here in the next couple of weeks and moves that could be monumental. And Kevin, I think the criticism would have been if Derrick Henry didn't get the ball in the postseason, as much as the Ravens were criticized in the AFC Championship game, could you have imagined the outrage and uproar if he didn't get the ball? Because physically, it's really hard to miss him on the football field. And he's only been the best running back for the last 6, 7 seasons?
Yeah, no, he's incredible. And I mean, we talk about it now, him being on the team hypothetically. Well, what if he was on the team during that championship game? And, now that they have Derrick Henry, there's no way if they make it back in that situation, they would run the running backs only 6 times. And that's exactly what it is, because the other thing with Henry too is as a receiver, he's very underrated. I know people look at him and they see this big, human that's massive, but he has underrated speed. And so even if, they weren't handing him the ball, he could have still made an impact as a receiver. And from a Titans perspective, I can't understand this. The reasoning being that I believe they didn't want another A.J. Brown situation where essentially one of their franchise cornerstones, they move off of him very quickly to Philadelphia. It's kind of like a sour exit. For Derrick Henry, he's one of the franchise legends over there. So if you trade him and you don't give him that kind of like last ride and last hurrah, you're like, all right, is this another A.J. Brown thing? Now, I would have gotten it if it was maybe like a 6th rounder or like a 5th rounder, but this is like a day 2 pick potentially that you're working with here. Yeah. So it's a 4th that, again, I think it was with certain production stipulations is we talked about there. It could have gone to a 3rd. From an organizational, and first of all, for a running back, that's a pretty good deal in today's game.
That's incredible.
It's a great value deal. So I get, and he ended up running for I think 153 yards in the final game of the year against Jacksonville. They upset Jacksonville to win, and he gave this speech on the field, and it was great, and it was a great feel-good moment. But they chose that over the draft pick, which again, some people will agree, some people will disagree. But them not having that extra draft capital, I don't know. I think from a franchise perspective, you're trying to build that team out. You're now short a mid-round draft pick there. Yeah, well, you know what? And this is the case, Rock. And I'll let you get to your point, but essentially, this was one of the feel-good moment. The two outcomes here is one, they wanted Derrick Henry to have that good send-off, and it meant so much to them. And the second thing is Tennessee and Baltimore are not friends. It's not friendly right now. And I feel like both of those, even though you don't want emotions to get in the way, clearly it felt like in this situation,
there's a little bit of animosity here of we don't want to be the reason why one of our out of division rivals goes on to something that they hadn't accomplished, or they've been chasing for all these years and have been so close sometimes.
If you look just at what Derrick Henry did, and Kevin brought it up in the final game of the regular season, behind that putrid Titans offensive line, 19 carries, 153 yards, and a touchdown. Just imagine what he would have done in Baltimore in the postseason. Honestly, it makes you think, it makes you wonder. We hate to play the hypothetical game, but we have to, because that's the report that just came out, that these two sides were so close to getting a deal done and bringing King Henry here to Baltimore last season. I'm telling you this, Rip, we don't know what could have happened. Obviously, you don't know with injuries and whatnot, but Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in the postseason in an AFC championship game, I'm taking them over a lot of teams, if not all teams in the National Football League when it comes to that, especially with how hot the Ravens were playing without Derrick Henry, without having him in the backfield. 6 carries is not happening with Derrick Henry. Like, Zach, to your point, here in Baltimore in the AFC championship game against the Chiefs, they talked about, how the different looks in the box looked. Like, it doesn't matter. With Derrick Henry, all of that goes away. I mean, this is a guy that is built like a defensive lineman, and he's running at you downhill. He's a physical freak, a force of nature. So the Ravens, in my opinion, they would have gone on to win the Super Bowl. But like we said, coulda, woulda, should have. We're playing the hypothetical game. It's time to take that mentality, that momentum, and do something about it this year with him in purple and black.
And at least in this case, it's fresh starts for not only the player, for Derrick Henry coming to Baltimore, still having a chance to win the Super Bowl, and then the Titans, it's a fresh start. You cleaned house. Right. And they still have Will Levis, obviously, who they're hoping. They put some pieces around. They brought in a new head coach. They are hoping. And then they brought in some replacements. That they got Spears. They got Tony Pollard. We'll find out there. But we just thought it's interesting. We had to bring that up here as we're going around. But this is what we're talking about now. It's like a deadline special. The NFL, I feel like it's so hard to make an impact trade at the deadline where it goes off and makes the full impact. Like, I know in the previous years, like Roquan got traded to Baltimore, right? Like, that's a big move. Christian McCaffrey got traded during the season to the 49ers, but in both those, it's not like in baseball. When you look at it, you can go back and see the moves that happen. And I'm curious, and that's something we're going to ask Jim Duquette, like, who's going to be this year's Jordan Montgomery? Like, there's going to be multiple moves for players. We just don't know. In the NFL, it's a lot of